Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 9 of the Big Boys Pod. Coming at you this week after a really fun weekend of matchups. We were out in the ground, out in Kinnick Stadium, experiencing it with our own eyes this weekend. So we'll break down a preview of Big Ten games this week, and a little look ahead at the basketball season since we got some games underway right now. I know Coach Cole's excited about that. How have you been?
hmm I'm good, man. Yeah, like you said, we got a chance to be boots on ground this weekend
Yeah.
inside Kinnick Stadium with over 60,000 of our closest friends and family. So that was a good time. Actually, it was a really good time to talk to a lot of people who have been listening to the podcast. Um, and honestly, next year, if we get a chance to go to an Iowa game, we might do like a stream or something, set up like a game day thing, because it sounds like there's some want for it, which is crazy. I would have never expected that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good reception out there from the Iowa fans. Um, I mean, Wisconsin fans, none of them mentioned the podcast to us yet. Word's still getting out, but
And we'll
good
talk about
atmosphere
Wisconsin
there.
fans later, for sure. They were good though. They were good, and it was a great game. Rain stayed off for us for most of it.
Hmm.
But the scoring kept going on. But there were no Friday games this
There
past
wasn't.
week. Friday game.
Potential World
Um,
Series, didn't end up needing it. Go Dodgers.
yeah, I was gonna actually last week bring up a list of stuff you could do instead. And the World Series was on there. I think it's died down, but Nuketown is back
Hmm.
after 14 years.
Hmm.
So that's a big deal. If you haven't been playing Call of Duty, get a chance to get on there, play some Nuketown on
Hmm.
Friday night last week. Um,
Double XP
but the
weekend
NBA,
too.
yeah, right. And I mean, you get those suckers off Mountain Dews day and night now,
Yeah.
Dorito bags. But that NBA is back. I mean, LaMelo Ball is playing 2016 Chino Hills style ball. I mean, just punch you in the face and then run down the court basketball all across the league. So that's fun too. But yeah, no, sorry. We'll get into the Saturday slate. November 2nd was a busy day for the Big Ten. And it started off, I mean, with that Ohio State Penn State game.
Hmm.
You want to get into that?
Yeah, this was a fun one. This is one we were looking forward to. I think a lot of the country was looking forward to.
hmm hmm
Just as kind of a barometer where kind of some of these top echelon Big Ten teams were at. Ohio State ended up pulling it out. A bit of an upset. It was number 4 versus number 3, but they were the number 4 team in the country and took down Penn State 20-13. Um, pretty back and forth game. Penn State was up pretty early on in this one, 10-0 in the first quarter. It kind of just unraveled from there. Ohio State got some things clicking and ended up pulling out this victory. Um, we caught a lot of this one kind of tailgating. At least I saw it at a lot of tailgates it was on. So watching a lot of that, but mostly just checking out the box score afterwards for this one. So I mean, Will Howard played good, really good ground game. Quinshon Judkins had 95 yards on just 14 carries. And busted off a 22-yard run. That was 22-yard run. That was in a pretty crucial moment of that game. So Ohio State's kind of got it back together after that scare last weekend versus Nebraska rather, um, and took down Penn State. What do you think on this one?
Well, I do think it's good to see Drew Aller back out there,
Mm-hmm.
playing. So good to see that he's just able to bounce back like that. Um, More so implications for the rest of the year. The fact that Ohio State won this game, um, kind of was it was definitely a must-win game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know fans who were boots on ground out in Happy Valley were really upset with Franklin, and there was a lot of flack towards him, and
Mm-hmm.
he honestly had to deal with that, just like literally even like leaving the field, which sucks. But I mean, this is the type of game where one of those coaches is going to be in front of the cameras, in front of the media, having to answer the tough questions. And Penn State, they were up 10-0 at the first quarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then just foot kind of fell off the gas, and Ohio State kept trudging along. So good for Ohio State. It really does make me think more so too about that Oregon loss for them, right?
Hmm.
And like you said last week, the different tune we could potentially be singing right now. But we'll keep seeing one of these two teams, or honestly, both these teams are probably going to find a way to sneak their way into um, playoffs. But if not, one of them is, and I think at this point it's going to be Ohio State.
Yeah. They still control their own destiny. They got that one conference loss to Oregon, like you mentioned, but
Mhm.
did knock off one of those undefeated teams in Penn State here, and they get a shot at the other one in Indiana in a couple weeks from now. We could
Yeah,
be staring at an 11-0 Indiana team versus a 9-1 Ohio State team going head to head, and that would be a very fun matchup if everything holds there. So, I mean, winning you're into Indy for Ohio State. I think even if you dropped an Indiana game, this game kind of gave them that marquee win that would sneak them into the 12-team playoff. And if you're Penn State, also just keep winning. I don't think a one-loss team from the Big Ten is going to get shut out either from the playoff. But yeah,
sure.
Franklin just tough getting it. I mean, tough in these big games. It seems like, especially against Ohio State the last few years. It's tough, kind of when the fans get frustrated like that. But I mean, got to win some of these games sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, those are the questions that I mean will be answered by the athletic directors and people higher above than us. But
Hmm.
tough to see the flack. I mean, you only ever want to see good things. And honestly, kids can be brutal these days. Some of the fans, right? And then they just run off. I mean, insane the things that people can get away with these days.
Hmm.
Um, so uh, I do respect those coaches for after a tough loss like that, sitting in front of all the sharks of those microphones and answering those questions, right? Because the last thing I want to do is that. The last thing I would want to be doing is breaking down film
Hmm. I agree with
or
you.
throwing. Well, we talked enough about that game, and we'll talk more about both those teams later. Do you want to get into this Minnesota versus number 24 Illinois game?
Now let's do it. I bet you're excited about this one. You want to jump us off?
Well, yeah, I was excited about this one. I think everyone was excited to see this kind of matchup. We talked about the Altmaier Brosmer matchup,
Hmm.
and both of them went for over 200 yards. So actually, pretty similar stat lines. Brosmer 213 yards, one touchdown. Altmaier 226 yards, one touchdown. Brosmer throwing for two more completions on the day with 22 compared to the 20. But really, kind of talking similar. Well, not I don't want to say too similar, but Minnesota just scored, and every time Illinois was able to answer, Minnesota answered back to that.
Hmm.
So that was awesome to see. Um, Dragon Keish did his job, kicking plenty of field goals. And getting stuff cooking after the Darius Taylor run and that last score at the end. I mean, in the fourth quarter, the score was 22-17, so it was kind of close at a point, right?
Hmm.
And even Illinois was leading at a point with that 17-16, but Minnesota pulled it out. And like I've said before, Brosmer is kind of a wagon and a guy you want in a locker room who just kind of has that juice factor.
Yeah, definitely. I think this team kind of has some sort of factor, whether it's the juice factor or just kind of that critical moment factor. This seems like maybe their third, fourth quarter comeback of the season. This one wasn't too crazy. I mean, it was 17-16 at the start of the fourth, and it's not like it was a leading a 2-minute drive or anything like that. But just, you're
Right,
down going to
right.
that last quarter and you pull out a pretty comfortable victory, 25-17, all things considered. They did that versus USC. They kind of got a win stolen from them versus Michigan from some refereeing errors there. That kind of was a similar story. So, I mean, kind of after that Iowa game, it seems like this team really turned a corner and has found some grit. Got them bowl eligible. I know you were looking into that a lot last week. So, 6-3 now. I think even if they lose out in the regular season, they'll finish with 7. You know, PJ Fleck's got to keep that perfect bowl game record and keep his
Hey,
program as a serious one.
and I know early in the year we had our grievances with fans about my PJ Flex takes, but this is where rubber meets the road,
Yeah.
right? And somewhere, and the Gophers are going bowling somewhere. I assume somewhere tropical. I assume we're playing somewhere with a team with blue on it, but we'll look into that way later in the years. There's always a team playing in the Outback Bowl, a
Yeah.
Big Ten team, so someone got to fulfill that. But good for the Gophers. Both these teams actually still are going bowling. Illinois is also with their 6-3, so good for them.
Yeah, good year
Gets to
for
see
Illinois.
extra.
3 losses now and fell out of the rankings, but I think a good year overall. Showed they had some toughness
Totally.
to them. So
Yeah, I think both those teams are like top 25 teams, to be honest. But either way, a game that was kind of crazy later or around that same time, but later that day, that Northwestern Purdue game. Do you have anything you want to start off with about this?
yeah, I mean, Purdue just another kind of bad luck game. This is their second time going to OT this year. Illinois a few weeks ago we talked about that one. It's pretty good detail just with that 50-49 final score that game had. 26-20 in this one. I mean, they got their shot and just couldn't get it done. It's tough losing a close one like that where you fought, through 60 minutes, got to go back out there and just couldn't close it out. So they lose 26-20 versus Northwestern. Good recovery game for Northwestern after kind of getting the doors blown off them by Iowa the weekend prior. But yeah, this is kind of just two bottom tier Big Ten teams at this point, it looks like, especially Purdue. I mean, 0-5 still in the conference, still looking for that first conference win. Got one win overall, and that was week 1 versus an FCS opponent. So just, all the FBS teams they've gone up against, they've been outclassed. We've seen them be very outmatched at times. That Notre Dame game comes to mind from early in the season. They're not getting blown out now, so maybe some of the pieces are falling into place, but, it might be time just to pack up the trailer, head down to that amazing West Lafayette at Dick's Sporting Goods, and just get ready for next year. Every season starts at Dick's.
This is true, right? And basketball did just start up, so hopefully they're checking it out. One stat I thought was interesting was the rushing difference. Purdue had 47 yards total rushing on the day, compared to the 122 yards with that awesome 51-yard run from Joseph Hyman II. So shout out him. And just, it's going to be a tough year. It's going to be a tough, long game every day when you can't get the run game going. Both teams were honestly pretty split with that 300, close to 300 yards, 302 to 290 on their passing yards. And right, it did go to OT, and you did say that's our second one, which means realistically we could be looking at a 3-5 Purdue, which still wouldn't be a great Purdue, and honestly would probably still be the bottom team of this conference still, but we'd be probably a little bit higher on them for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It wouldn't look kind of as much of an outlier, especially every other Big Ten team's got a win or two now at this point.
Right, and now they're still 0-5.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. And the road does not get much easier for them from here, unfortunately, either. We'll talk about their game this upcoming weekend. They're rivals with Indiana, so you got that one saved for rivalry week, and that team looks a few classes ahead of them right now. So, maybe
David versus Goliath.
Yeah, I mean, they are the Spoilermakers. If you're a Purdue fan, and you got that big in-state rivalry, how would you like to save all of your Big Ten wins and knocking off perhaps an undefeated Indiana team to end the year? Would be something. Have to blow the doors off the Dicks for that one.
That's for sure. Next week we're talking about it for sure.
Yeah. That's it for me on that one. I don't know if you have anything else.
No, that's really everything else. I do want to talk about number one team in the land, though, that played. The Oregon Ducks playing former number one team in the land, Michigan Wolverines. And I say former as in a long time ago, about this time calendar year last year.
Yeah.
But regardless, still, Dylan Gabriel wagon. Only one touchdown, but 294 yards. Pretty good completion ratings, going for a 22 out of 34. So, I mean, 2 for 3 on the day. Stays perfect on their 9-0. More so just proving that they can go anywhere in the country on anyone's field and play their game. So good for the Ducks. Really fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, they just keep rolling. A lot of these wins now, they're easily getting into the 30-plus point total So that offense is clicking. Dylan Gabriel, we've talked about him so much this season, but and you give him his kind of shout out here between the passing touchdown and the rushing touchdown, just looking every bit like a Heisman candidate at this point and MVP kind of this team. Jordan James has been really good, though, too, out of the backfield. Had a big day, 23 carries, 117 yards, and a touchdown. So having that as a solid option is really big for you. And then this defense came up really big. They had 7 combined tackles for loss. So just being able to stuff Michigan like that, a team that really likes to run the ball, it's kind of all they got this year, unfortunately, is really able to kind of shut them down and kind of just keep that game out of reach. And that's what they did. I mean, 28-10 at halftime and just kind of set it on cruise control from there, similar to what they did last week versus Illinois.
Yeah, and if cruise control is still scoring more points than your opponent in the second half, that's kind of scary, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, really cool to see where Oregon's at right now. I know that Dan Lanning's been the kind of coach and the guy in the media who's continued to say, like, who cares about this? And kind of similar with that QB1 Dylan Gabriel, who is legitimate top 2, 3, 4 Heisman option, right? I mean, we're talking maybe Travis Hunter. Boise State's got a guy who's making a good case for himself, right? And you could throw a couple other names in there too. Miami's quarterback.
Ward's good.
But like you said, when they're cooking and clicking, and Dylan Gabriel can score at will with a team like that, and they got options, right? I mean, Wynn scored 2 touchdowns on that. Trayshawn Holden had a decent day with some nice catches. They just got options, and that's going to show deeper into this run they go on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's all I got about that one. Next one you want to get into, that number 13 Indiana Hoosiers, the other undefeated team in the conference, 9-0, whopping score 47-10 against Michigan State Spartans. Also kind of showing, hey, we're a top 5 team maybe in the country. Who's stopping them at this point, right? Especially after a couple of the teams that lost. Iowa State, about time, right? So we'll see. I think they're legitimately the top 5 team in the country. I don't know who's really stopping them at this point, outside of some of these other teams that are ranked higher than them. And a lot of those teams that are ranked higher than them are the top 3, 4 other better teams in our conference.
Yeah, of Big Ten teams, they're ranked 4th. They're 9th in the first college football playoff poll, I believe. Just came out yesterday. And they're 9th in that one. So finally getting a little bit of love up into the top 10. But, I mean, if they win out, they'll pass all these teams in the Big Ten. Oregon's number 1. Ohio State's number 2.
They're 8. They're 8.
Okay, sorry. So, yeah.
No, that's fine. So top 50% of the top 8 are
Big Ten
teams.
Yep. Yeah, and I was doing this. I don't know if you caught that. They're rolling. Yeah. Just rolling. That's what they've been doing all season. 9-0 now. I'm not sure at this point if that's their best start ever, or, if it's tied with some year. 67 is kind of that last big year we've mentioned a few times. Rose Bowl berth that season, Big Ten title, all that. But 24 is up there now as a special year for them. And what Kurt Signetti's been able to do there in his first year coaching that team has been miraculous, really, and I think shoo-in for Coach of the Year at this point, no matter how the rest of the year goes. I mean, just that turnaround job has been crazy. But yeah, just another dismantling of a team. They don't just win, they win big. That average margin of victory is like 20-plus points now at this point of the year. Michigan State got on the board first. They scored their first 10 points in the first quarter. It was 10-0 going into the second quarter, and this game ended 47-10. I mean, just had a couple stumbles out of the gate, but just once they got going, and Curtis Rourke's return was a big one. Had to sit out the last couple weeks, but he's back. 19 for 29, 263 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. And with that, I'm going to pick him again. That's my big boy of the week. Just to have that grit in you to get back out there after a tough injury. Like I said, stumble early. He's a little rusty, been a few weeks off, but once that rust wears off, it's the same old Curtis Rourke we've gotten to know this season, and dominant performance from him. They spread the rock around in the backfield, not as heavy as the last couple weeks with star QB1 back, but this team's good. I still really like them, and I'm excited for that Ohio State matchup in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, back like he never left.
Mm-hmm.
Signetti's got a quarterback room and honestly a locker room that is next man up mentality. Glad to see that Rourke is back out there. I mean, I honestly was talking, I didn't know what it was. I thought it might be out longer.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's back sooner than that. Good to see. And glad that Aiden Childs did get one touchdown on the day, but did throw two interceptions. And that just kind of goes to show against how good this Indiana Hoosiers defense really is, too, right?
Yeah.
That secondary is getting the job done. So really fun to see this wagon of a team down in Bloomington keep going. And honestly, I think every team that's ranked in the top 8, these Big Ten conference teams, are going to win their games this week, and we'll talk more about that later. But there's no reason they don't stay or move up in polls.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all I got for that one.
But great pick, great pick. No, that's a great pick.
Thank you.
Obviously, we love talking Curtis Rourke on here, and glad to see him back. So shout out.
Shout out.
Another
time
shout
now?
out.
Sorry, before we move on. Third time, I think.
He might be. He's racking them up, man. We'll have to do a head count at the end of the football season.
To hand out
who does what.
All-Americans.
And our final
Yeah.
Big Boys of the Year.
Yeah.
But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Another game we had on the Saturday, chock full of games, was that UCLA Nebraska game. Ethan Garber's 2 touchdowns, 219 yards. Love watching him play. Even more so, 6 carries for 56 yards. Ethan Garbers, didn't know you could run like that. So nice to see you kind of staying mobile, staying moving.
Yeah.
And helped lead them and the UCLA Bruins to a win out at Nebraska.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you pick up that second conference victory. Their first one was versus Rutgers, I believe, right?
Correct.
So still not one of those like classic like 10 Big Ten teams. A couple of the newer editions, but they'll get one eventually, I'm sure.
Count it.
Yeah, it's a Big Ten win. I mean, we love all these teams the same. But yeah, 27-20, pretty good performance from Garbers for sure. We gave him some love a couple weeks ago in their first Big Ten win, and kind of seems like the second Big Ten win kind of rolled through him. So your star QB1, you got to put the team on your back sometimes, and that's what he did. But he wasn't the only one really coming up big. That defense made a huge stop at the end there versus Nebraska. I mean, this game was close into the fourth quarter. Nebraska made it close, rather, with a score late. Defense had to get the stop to keep that game in check, and they did. So good showing from them, and it seems like they've maybe turned a corner here now that they got that first Big Ten win under their belt. Feel ready to compete.
Yeah, right. And now they're 2-4 in the conference, so they're trending upwards compared to the rough start they had. And that could maybe be a good thing, right? Figuring out these pieces now, so going into next year, you can hit the ground running.
Yep.
If I'm a Nebraska fan, I'm disappointed for sure. But you know what? I'm not a Nebraska fan, so I don't have to worry about that. That's everything I got about that one, though.
All right, yeah, that's it for me. We got 2 games left here. We got the Wisconsin and Iowa game that we were at. Do you want to save that one for last? The other game.
Well,
okay.
Might as well. I was gonna say because we have this West Coast game.
Yeah, which started after the Iowa game, but being on the West Coast, we'll jump out to this one first out in Seattle. USC making the trek up I-5 there to Seattle, taking on the Washington Huskies. Not a good road trip for USC again. They've fallen out at 2-5 in conference play with a 26-21 loss to Washington. Jonah Coleman was really big in this game with 2 touchdowns. We've seen him this year tear apart some defenses, and he did that to USC. And kind of a tough struggle type day for Miller Moss with 3 touchdowns. 3 interceptions. Did have 2 touchdowns, but 3 picks and just not taking care of the ball is going to be tough for anybody. And this game just got out of hand, and USC's in a really precarious position now at this point and maybe struggling to even get to bowl eligibility at where they're at. So I don't know if this one was surprising to you or kind of what your thoughts were on this one.
Someone had to win this game, and it was close. I really kind of was hoping Miller Moss would pull it out. I mean, the three interceptions hurts for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but now, like looking back at the season that USC's had, it's questionable on how legit they actually are,
Yeah.
right? I mean, their wins are against LSU at the start of the year. Everyone was high on that, and then they scorched out Utah State 48-0, and then they're losing games. They're losing games. They're losing games at home in overtime to Penn State. That then they lose another nail biter to Maryland. And then last week they won right against USC. But so hurts for sure. Bowl eligibility is just right there. Anything can happen, but it's kind of backs against the wall for the Trojans. Um, and that's really all I have to say about that one. Kind of like
Mm-hmm.
you said, they kind of stuck it out, and Washington played a full 4 quarters there at the end to get it done.
Yeah, they jumped out to a good first half lead, 20-7 at halftime, and just really didn't turn back from there. USC couldn't answer.
Hmm.
Yeah, that LSU game at the beginning of the year, I was so hot on that USC team. I think a lot of the country was. Um, was that more of a fluke win, do you think? Or do you think that's maybe a statement as to how deep and strong the Big Ten as a conference is? Where USC, who's now a bottom, probably, take a look at the standings here in a minute, but probably bottom 5 teams in the Big Ten, knocks off what is a top 5 team in the SEC. What does that look like,
Hmm.
conference versus conference?
That's a good question. You know what? And I should have asked. I was actually just chatting with Chris Dorning
Mm-hmm.
earlier, the former SEC Gator legend and NFL legend. But he was on campus earlier. I should have asked him that about the parity between the leagues because he was talking about parity in college football and how much better it's gotten.
Yeah.
But I do think there is something to say about how stacked the Big Ten is. It'll be interesting to see USC if they can pull out 2 more wins. If who they play. I'd love to see an SEC Big Ten bowl game somewhere.
Yeah, the way it's shaping up with the new playoff, I'm sure we'll get one. A lot of those like non-playoff games still, like you mentioned the Outback Bowl, or it's called something different, but whatever. That and like
Mm,
the Citrus Bowl seem to be Big Ten
right.
SEC matchups. So we'll get a couple comps there late in the year. But I mean, this was an early season comp that really fell in Big Ten's favor there.
Mhm. Well, one thing that fell in our favor was the boys in black and gold,
Good segue. I had
Iowa
nothing else.
Hawkeyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing else to say, man. What we do have to say is we had a great time in Iowa City, boots on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and man, watching the Hawkeyes play was what a great showing. Just to go out and Kinnick and see that, right?
Yep.
So a little night game action started at 6:30, and Wisconsin Badgers came down to play in Iowa City, sold out game, and kind of like a lot of these other teams, once they got uh, the offense rolling, they didn't really look back.
Yep.
So Iowa won 42-10. And what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway, and I briefly considered him for Big Boy of the Week, but then I was like, this is just a homer pick because, I mean, the performance was good for us as Hawkeye fans, but not a crazy performance. Um, but first start from new QB1 Brendan Sullivan, and he delivered. 7 for 10 passing, 93 yards and a touchdown, no picks. And then on the ground, 9 carries, 58 yards and a touchdown, busted off a 19-yard run in the second half there. We were going nuts, if you remember that one. It made a little, kind of looked like he was going to fall, held himself up, made a little shake and bake move around one of the defensive backs, and then kind of got tackled from behind. But just that mobility, I think, was really refreshing to see. So not eye-popping stats, but kind of just made this team have a completely different feel. And on what was kind of a cold and rainy night there, needed to get it done through the ground. He got it done there, and Caleb Johnson delivered, of course, again, too. 24 carries, 135 yards, 3 touchdowns, just racking up stats at this point. and just a dominant showing from the Hawkeyes. Defense came up big a few times, and really put that bad first quarter behind them. Down 3-0 at the end of that quarter, and didn't look back from there.
Yeah. Well, and who wasn't looking back a lot either was Caleb Johnson, right?
No.
And I know you're saying he might be a homer pick, but he is my big boy of the week. And part of that is because I think if he, which I think at this point he has to, right, break the Sean Green record,
Mm-hmm.
we'll look back at this game as a big catalyst for that because of those 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So I understand it wasn't like the craziest game, maybe, but every time the offense looked to him, he got the job done.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, Brendan Sullivan was great on his feet too. So that's just added to this. And the amount of jerseys we saw with the Sullivan tape and things like that, and just how excited everyone was on some of those big plays
Mm-hmm.
and the defense. But yeah, I gotta give Big Boy of the Week to Caleb Johnson, number 2 for this. This could be a game that helps give him a Heisman push, and also this is the game that helps him break Sean Green's all-time Hawkeye record.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Johnson's a homer pick, for the record. I was talking about Sullivan in that regard.
Okay, fair.
Because, Johnson, 3 touchdowns from any running back across the Big Ten.
Still,
We're going to take
I don't
note.
want people. I mean, I'm already biased enough.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think between him and Rourke, those seem to be our 2 common themes with these big boy picks this season. A couple multi-time winners there from them.
Mhm.
Yeah, this game felt really good. It was kind of therapeutic in a way just to see what a new quarterback did. I know I've been asking for that, and a lot of other Hawkeye fans have been asking for a change of that position for a lot of this season. And even the last 3 years, just a lot of quarterback struggles. So a lot of clamoring for Sullivan to get some more time than he was getting. He got that. He delivered. That felt good. And then just playing that smash mouth Big Ten football and having it work versus one of your closest Big Ten rivals always feels really good.
On the trophy game, no
On a
less.
trophy game, yeah, the fans were going nuts. They played jump around after got done doing the victory polka, and then jump around came on. You had taken off before then, but so I don't know if I texted that to you or anything. But right at the end of the game, we were walking out of the game, and they played jump around just to kind of throw on in Wisconsin's
Okay.
face a little bit.
No, good man. I mean, yeah, it was a great time. Yeah, and tried to ditch out a little early just to beat some of that crazy traffic. But
Yeah.
man, Iowa looking good late at night. In with the lights, the all black, still top 5 look for all black
Hmm.
in the country, no less. Um, so that's really everything that went on this week.
Yeah.
That was a stacked Saturday, a pretty busy Saturday, and we're glad we got to be a part of it. Definitely going to look to be a part of more events, not only in next year's football, but hopefully this year in some other sports as well. We'll see what happens and what awaits us. But do you have anything you want to bring up standings wise or anything before we get into this preview for Week 11?
Yeah, we'll take a look at the standings real quick. Kind of as we go through the games, it's getting to the point where we know where a lot of these teams are at. So in those reviews, you get a good sense. But just kind of breaking it all down, there's really kind of 4 teams left in contention here for Indy.
Hmm.
Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. I believe all
Yeah.
those teams except for Penn State kind of control their own destiny at this point. So Penn State needs a little bit of help, but could still get there. And we go into these 2 lost teams, Iowa, Minnesota. I believe there's still a chance for both of them if some things fall really weird. But I
Sure.
don't know too many of us Hawkeye fans or any Gopher fans that are really thinking we're booking a trip to Indianapolis this December. After then, I mentioned it a couple times. We just have this smattering of teams kind of in this middle chunk of the conference.
Hmm.
I'd include Iowa and Minnesota in this category, but we got Illinois, Washington, Michigan, and Wisconsin all sitting at 3-3. UCLA is kind of inched into this category a little bit with 2-4 now on the season, along with Nebraska, who's slid a little bit near here of late, 3 straight losses. Michigan State at 2-4 and Northwestern at 2-4. Then USC, 15th place in the conference at 2-5. Maryland and Rutgers, 2 East Coast stalwarts there, hanging on at 1-4. And then in 18th place, unfortunately, we got the Purdue Boilermakers of West Lafayette.
Hmm.
Um, just hanging out. What you got?
I do want to say, right now, odds-wise, Ohio State's at under 105 to
Really?
win the championship.
Favorite
And
over
the Ducks
Oregon?
are, yeah, Ducks are at plus 105. So, I mean, Vegas is Vegas. That's kind of looking good. Even more so, if you're in Bloomington, plus 1100. I mean, listen, that could pay for your new books
Yeah,
for next semester.
definitely.
Um, and they're undefeated, so who's going to stop them?
Hmm. Yeah, we don't
But
have
yeah,
a stats guy or gal yet. Give that a few years that I could just give us the stat on here. But
we're looking for unpaid interns for sure.
summer jobs here.
Yeah.
But if we could pull it up right away, I feel like it's not that often that college teams play each other twice in a season. It can happen at rematch in the conference championship, rematch in a
Mm.
bowl game. But the few times it's happened, I feel like anecdotally teams split those series. So maybe that goes in Ohio State's favor if they do end up meeting each other again. But the one that's really coming to mind for me is that Alabama LSU, the year they played each other in the national championship, Alabama ran away with that title, and LSU had beat them earlier in the year.
Right.
And I'm sure it's
And it
happened a
wasn't
couple
even a game.
times.
It almost wasn't even a game at that point.
Yeah. So I feel like teams will split, but Oregon got it done once. I guess actually, you know what? On the other hand, just last year, Oregon played Washington twice, and Washington came ahead both times. It was Oregon's only 2 losses on the season was to the national runners-up, but who knows? We get a fact check on that here. That's it for standings update. Unless you got anything else, otherwise we move on to some previews here.
No, I was gonna say we can get into the previews. If you want to look into your conference champion odds, you can look up your teams yourself. But I just thought those were the interesting ones for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and use our
But yeah,
promo
no,
code at DraftKings.
what is it?
We don't have a promo code at DraftKings,
Oh,
unfortunately.
okay. Well, honestly, probably could say if we don't have a legal team to deal with that. Yeah. But we do have a Friday night game.
We
Right?
do. It's back.
That's what matters. And more so, it's the Iowa Hawkeyes going out to Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
UCLA. So two teams that have won this past week, two teams that are clicking kind of at their best, but in reality, Iowa's best, or Iowa's level right now is above and beyond what Ethan Garbers and the boys in blue are going to bring.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. I like Iowa in this one. They're favored by 6.5. They got out there today. I saw it. We're recording this on Wednesday, the 6th.
Beautiful.
So
That's
got a couple days early, get adjusted to that time difference a little bit. Unfortunately, this one's an evening game. It'll start at 6 o'clock LA time. So a little earlier than 9:08 LA time. That would have been a little early for them after driving 30 hours. But I like the Hawks in this one.
If you get that, that's deep cuts.
send us a comment if you get that. I like Iowa in this one. Obviously, UCLA's turned a corner, like we said, but I think we've kind of figured it out now. Our team's rolling a little bit. It feels like, at least every time we feel like this the last few years end up getting stomped in the face. But Brendan Sullivan making his second start in the Hawkeye black and gold. Like to see him air it out a little bit more. Hopefully the weather's a little bit clearer and not rainy like it was in Iowa City, where we could see what he can do with his arm. But if he can bring in that element of his game, I think Hawkeyes will come away with the dub in this one. I'm calling it by 10 points. Show me 31-21 final score.
Okay, so we got an overhitting too. I could see both those things happening, to be honest. They're getting out there early this week. It's a Rose Bowl game. How excited can you be? And like we said, good time to be in the Hawkeye locker room. So that's an exciting Friday night game for sure. You want to get into one of these first Saturday games? There's a couple starting at 11. There's one on NBC and one on Fox.
Yeah, NBC is something to do with Notre Dame, I think, is what I saw. I don't know. Usually it's the night game, but we'll go with Big Noon like we normally do in our Fox matchup. Purdue at Ohio State. It's like Big Noon's 4th time in Columbus this year, it seems like.
Yeah.
And
They were out there for Marshall, I remember.
Yeah, they were there, and then they were there just like last week, or well, they were in. It was an Ohio State game, but in Happy Valley. Um,
Yeah, they follow him for sure. Big
regardless,
Buckeye fans over there.
yeah. Ohio State favored by 38 in this one. That's just an oof of a spread that I don't want to touch either way. Definitely like Ohio State to win this. Seems like they get them by 38, but they've been scared by teams that aren't so great this season, a la Nebraska. So maybe it's closer than that, but should be a comfortable win and move right on to 8-1 for the Buckeyes.
Yeah. Matchup predictor, Purdue has 1%.
Yeah,
Right, and what that means is anything can happen, but
you're
reality is we've
saying there's
seen
a
Ohio.
chance.
Yeah, exactly. But Ohio State could be an 8-0 team. We've kind of talked about that
Yeah,
enough, I think. So I get not wanting to touch this spread, but if Ohio State every time they get the ball and score, they're gonna score 38 or more.
mm-hmm.
So depends how you look at it. But Ohio State is not being stopped by the Spoilermakers, at least not this week. They're holding all that in, like you said, for the Hoosiers if
Yeah.
it's gonna happen.
Yep. That's exactly right. That one
So
that one
there's
percent Purdue
that.
chance. I'll hold on to that though, man. That was me last night with the New York Times needle.
Hey, hope is a powerful thing. They made a whole three more Star Wars movies about it.
All right.
Man. And if I'm hoping for more too, I'm hoping for the Gophers for another win.
Yeah.
They're cooking as well on the road, going out to Piscataway, New Jersey, to play the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers. A 4-4 team. Thought they were going to have a better year than that, to be honest, earlier in
Hmm.
the season, and they've kind of had a tough time in conference with that 1-4 conference schedule. Um, Looking at the numbers, looking at more so the last names on the jerseys, Brosmer, I'm all for him, right? And I think we get that. But being a Gopher guy growing up, it's just kind of bittersweet watching this team be really good now. I saw a picture of PJ Fleck running out of the tunnel with the whole team behind him last week with the tightest tie he's had all season, right? So the guy's here to win. And I don't think they've played IU yet. I don't think they actually do play IU this season. But would have been a really interesting game to see both those coaches kind of meet each other. Regardless, I think the Gophers kind of steamroll Rutgers here.
Yeah, I like Minnesota in this one too, and they've been playing really well. Standing Screen had their win streak, and it was up to something impressive. You have 4 games now, which I think takes us back to that Iowa. No, it'd be the Michigan loss right after the Iowa loss.
Mhm, mhm,
Um,
mhm.
so if you take those games out, this was a team that was sitting at 2-3, hadn't won a conference game, and has just completely turned it around, won 4 straight. Puts them tied for third in the conference with Iowa, and looks a lot better. Rutgers really stumbled. I think you go back to when that last Minnesota loss happened. We thought at this point of the season those teams would be flip flopped in different stories.
Fully.
But I like Minnesota in this one with you too. They're favored by what was it, 6.5, I believe, 6 flat in Piscataway, New Jersey. There, I like them. Give me a win. Fleck needs a big one. Give me a 21-point win. It's out of hand in the first quarter. Give me 40-19.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know how that
Big
19
over guy.
happens, but maybe a safety. Brosmer couldn't get away.
Stuff happens,
Gets
right?
mad
It's the
about
big
it
man.
and explodes from there.
I do want to say this weekend in person, you did say to me, even if Minnesota loses the rest of their games, they'll be 7 wins in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Pete Black doesn't lose in bowl games.
Nope.
And I would put my tokens on that one as well. So it will be interesting to see where we go. Hoping there's a Pop Tart involved. Um, Next game I want to talk about though, a game actually I did want to bring this up. Tickets for this right? Tickets for a game at the Memorial Stadium in Bloomington this week. Michigan's going down to IU. Tickets as low as $250.
Oh, yeah, dude. I looked before I opened it just because I didn't look. I should have
As
waited for
low as
you. But,
as low as 250. Yeah, so let's just say it's a great time to be in Bloomington because every single game is excited and they're about to be 10-0,
mhm.
right? I'm all for them this game. The spread's at 14. I don't know if I want to go with 14 just because uh, stuff can happen, right? And we see Smash Mouth football. We talk a lot about it in this conference. Stuff happens every week. We just saw USC lose only by 5. Michigan's a type of team that could lose only by 5.
Mhm.
They're 3-3 in the conference, but can't stop. Can't stop, won't stop.
Nope.
Signetti is running that town. They got the Signetti towel, which is some people say it's a homage to his time in Pittsburgh. I say it's an homage to just being the man.
Yeah, I'm gonna need another pack. The way this man's been smoking these games. I
For
don't know. I was
real, for
thinking of a
real.
dumb pun there. Couldn't get it.
That's okay. That's okay. You know,
Yeah,
he's leaning into the cigarette thing.
yeah,
I mean, like
yeah, yeah. The little red
the towel.
triangle. Yeah, whatever. Just the
Yeah.
Marlboro design on there. But yeah, I mean, this 14-point spread. You mentioned it. I think that's their lowest margin of victory all season. So I think Vegas is setting this right there. Where I was just talking about it. I think their average is like 20 something points. It's like, do you think Michigan plays them closer than any other team they played this year, or is Indiana going to keep rolling? I think that's what they mean by putting the spread where it's at. And I don't know if
Sure.
Michigan's that team this year. I mean, that defense is really good, but we've seen what Rourke can do just cutting defenses up. This Indiana defense has looked really legit, and that Michigan offense really struggles to get it going, where I think this game gets really out of hand really quickly. Nebraska-esque in that sense. The over-under is the one where I think it's being disrespectful to Indiana. They put it at 49.5. Indiana has proven multiple times this season they can hit that on their own. So give me a
True.
63-17 Indiana victory in this one. They're 10-0. Bloomington's rocking. 250 is going to look cheap compared to tickets in a couple weeks.
I like it. I like it. Dude, you might be onto something. Um, Speaking of expensive tickets, right? Our tickets, well, actually not nearly as expensive, but they're gonna be expensive soon. Our national champion tickets, which Oregon's on the run for. So Autzen Stadium, Maryland's going all the way across the nation. That's what we get with the new Big Ten is we get these crazy trips.
Mhm.
And Maryland's got their turn now. Kind of similar matchup, kind of similar makeup of these teams, to be honest. Both these Michigan and Maryland teams going out to play some Goliath type programs. But Matchup Predictor has a 7% win rate for Maryland. I think that's very generous of them.
Mhm.
Oregon just continues to cook. I think Dylan Gabriel could throw for 3 or 4 touchdowns here. I mean, I don't know what his prop thing is, but if it's 3.5, I'm hitting the over there.
Yeah, I like Oregon in this one too. Been loving Gabriel. He was kind of light on touchdowns last week. One apiece on the ground and in the air, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah, it wasn't as much.
I think he's been saving up a little something. 3.5, I like it. Give me 4 from Gabriel. Give me 1 on the ground too. They're favored by 25. Should have no problems clearing that. Over under on this one's 57.5. I like him just to smash everything this weekend. I want to cheer for some overs. I want to see these good teams really dominate, really show what they're capable of come the playoff here, where these teams are at.
Mhm.
I'm taking Oregon. Let's go 52-28. Final score.
Okay. There you go. So sounds like the homers, or not the homers, right? But the big dogs in all these games are supposed to handle business, and I can see it the way things go.
52 to
And going
28.
into
Also, sorry, means they do not cover.
okay,
I'm
well,
calling it now. They do not cover.
okay,
Miss it by 1.
there you go. So someone's got to miss. Uh, Anything more about that one?
No,
Or
no, that's
one
all.
more game?
That's all. I'm just being
Okay,
silly.
No, you're good. There
Cut
is
me
one
off
more
while you
game.
can.
Uh, the Penn State
Hmm.
playing 7-1. Penn State. They're hosting Washington. So should be routine for Penn State, to be honest. With their one loss now at this point, being last week, and some of the just flack that James Franklin has been getting and stuff. I'm
Hmm.
sure it's been a brutal week of practice for the Nittany Lions, just getting back on track. So they'll take care of business this week for sure, and I think they'll handle the Huskies no problem.
Yeah, I like Penn State in this one too. Quarterback matchup here is kind of interesting. It's two guys that have continuously had a lot of hype, seem to kind of fail to deliver on those expectations in a way. I don't mean to be unfair to either one of them. These are both really good quarterbacks. Um, but on the season, Allers completion percentage sits right around 2/3, just shy of 1,800 yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 picks. Rodgers, on the other hand, a little more yards, similar completion percentage, right around 60 to 70%. 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So a little bit better of a season on paper for Will Rogers. So it really comes down to the ground game. That's where Jonah Coleman really shines for Washington. We've seen what he's capable of. Even last week had a 2 touchdown week. Um, I think Penn State in that defense is too much for this Washington team. They're favored by 13 and a half. They play games close. We've seen that even versus Wisconsin a couple weeks ago.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't like them to cover. I like them to win this comfortably, but just not a high scoring affair by any means. This is the one I'll go against what I just said. Give me a 23-10 final score. Penn State
Okay.
comfortable.
Well, I think we'll see on that one. I kind of totally disagree with that. I think they'll score more than that, but that's going to be a fun game to watch, no less.
Absolutely.
All these games are, and only 6 games this week. A couple teams off, but nevertheless, enough to keep you satisfied as teams continue into their final push for playoff and bowl eligibility.
We got something else to fill the void now with only 6, if you wanted to mention that.
Are you talking basketball?
Yes, I am.
Okay, yeah. I wanted to make sure. I was like, because I have it pulled up right here.
Kick
Yeah.
us off.
Basketball is back, not just across the country, but back in the Big Ten. In fact, now that the it is 9:45 Big Boys time, Central time. Every team has played and every team has won. Every team won their first game of the opening season for Big Ten. So good for them. The highest ranking team right now is Purdue at 14. Then it follows Indiana Hoosiers 17, Rutgers at or sorry, UCLA at 22, and then Rutgers at 25. So no one in the top 15, and we'll see a lot of these things shake up. I mean, being a basketball fan, being a Butler basketball fan, Big East alma mater school, I know if I know one thing about the rankings, it's they change a lot in basketball,
They do.
right? So we'll see a lot of these teams flip up and down, and I'm sure find at least 1 or 2 games to at least live stream or watch or get to be boots on the ground for. But there's some interesting players, some interesting rosters that I'm looking forward to watching this week that we'll get more into later.
Yeah, I think just a general preview of the conference. I mean, it's kind of wide open this year. It seems like I don't know if you disagree with that, but a Zach Edey-less Purdue kind of opens the door for a lot of teams. No Terrence Shannon at Illinois either. Kind of maybe the 2 best players in the Big Ten last season. So yeah, not a lot of teams highly ranked that maybe are in that national championship bubble, right? Or bubble, sorry, kind of conversation right now.
Mhm.
But let's let the year open up and see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean Illinois, I think will be a good dark horse pick for sure,
Hmm.
with some of the people that they got coming back. But I can't wait to watch for sure.
Who's your early pick? It's mid March. Who's winning the Big Ten tourney this year?
I think I'm saying Illinois. Like
Really?
just looking at their roster right now at who's coming back with Will Riley, being just like the points leader that he is, with 31 points average, pretty good. So even if you slow him down, they've got pretty solid defense that they've shown over the past few years, especially with Johnson Jr. With 6 blocks. Um, so I mean, dude, it's just gonna be good.
Hmm.
But who knows? I mean, basketball is, especially college basketball, leads us to games where nail biters happen, and teams can win just based off of pure heart and the last few effort plays. So we'll see.
Absolutely. Got a fun year ahead of us.
It's gonna be fun, man. It's gonna be fun.
Anything else wanted to talk about this episode? Otherwise, we wrap it up here.
I think we can wrap it up, man. I mean, not to sound like broken records, but it sounds like we both are liking Curtis Rourke and Caleb Johnson. But is it a broken record or is it just another episode in the Big Ten season, right?
Yeah.
And we're starting to see these things shake out. Um, and if it wasn't for Dylan Gabriel, he'd probably win Big Ten QB of the year. And he still maybe could, right? You
Yeah.
can always make a case for that. And I'm excited to get to our big boys of the year at the end of the year, to talk more about that for sure. But no,
Absolutely.
that's all I got for this week. I appreciate everyone tuning in for sure. And make sure that you keep following along. Comment if you have something to say or if you think we're off about something. I know people have always thought we're off about a few things here and there or come out and say things to us. Let us know in the comments, right? And we might even start doing a comment of the week if possible.
Yeah.
So that's on you guys. So make sure you leave that for us. But thanks for watching. That's episode 9. Anything else, Trevor?
Nope, that's it for me. I want to do a mailbag
Alrighty.
app, so I'm right there with you. Send us your comments.
Send us, yeah, and we might exactly. The next step is Q&A after we get our intern.
Yeah.
We'll have a mailbag it out.
Yeah.
All right. Alrighty.
We'll see
Well,
you.
thanks for watching, everyone.
See you
Peace
next week.
out.
Bye.